Y'all want to talk about TRT today? Because
Mm.
I've been seeing some wild things from HRT clinics about, I swear to God, these clinics try to turn women into men when women are already afraid of going on testosterone anyway because they think they're going to get bulky or turn into a dude. When in
Mhm.
reality, like testosterone, like while yes, like males have higher testosterone compared to females, like females, we still produce testosterone from like our ovaries and like adrenal glands. So it's like it plays just as an important role in female health, including like bone density, muscle mass, sex drive, just as much as like our estrogen and progesterone. So like don't when you hear testosterone, ladies, don't think, oh, I'm gonna turn into a dude. Like at the right dosage, you're gonna stay more feminine.
I would say doing your research before too, just of like what the effects, long-term lifestyle, all of that you want. Like two very different people in this chat right here. So myself and Ash, both on TRT. I know I want to have a family. I've been very on top of, consistent blood work and so is she. But just for like what I was signing up to because I was already 35 and wasn't at the point of having kids yet, I did decide to make that decision. However, Ash is in a little different situation. She's 28 and no, she never wants kids. So that is definitely a factor I would say to keep in mind of like what your fertility goals are and all of that. And if you have either an OB/GYN that is open to also being part of your HRT journey and navigating you through that when you do decide it's time to get pregnant. Because it doesn't mean you can never have kids because you're on HRT, but you probably will come off. Some people don't have to, but most people do.
No, not really. I'm glad that you pointed out the whole fertility thing for sure, because a lot of women are like, it's going to stop my natural production of testosterone, which I crack up over because I'm like, bro, you came to me with like five. It was a five total and like 0 point nothing free testosterone. You're worried about your natural production. Okay. But yeah, that is true. You do have to consider that in your future goals, of course. What are you seeing, Ash? Like what are you seeing?
Yeah, so the dose, like I think it's important first to start with the baseline, so that way when I tell you what I'm seeing, it makes more sense. But
Okay.
like if in a perfect ideal world, I feel like ideally women should be riding anywhere when we look at labs, anywhere between 30 and 60. Like that is a pretty ideal place. Now, if you are wanting to be, we'll say sporty,
Sport, what do we call
sporty
them sport
spice.
TRT or something like
Yeah,
that.
sport TRT. It's like, okay, I wouldn't bat an eye between 70 and 100, right? But like naturally, a woman riding between 30 and 60 is like God's fucking gift. Because most of the time, like Meg mentioned, we're seeing like less than 20 on labs, right? Total test. And then free test, you're like trying to fucking like see what's going on in there, right? So that's the state of where we are seeing trends naturally within females due to stress, birth control, post birth control, poor diet, poor stress management, like infections, yada, yada, yada. We're seeing just low levels of test, right? So 30 to 60 is ideal, right? So then we're thinking about, well, what about starting TRT dosages? It's like, if you are just wanting to feel a little bit better, I feel like starting at 2 to 3, maybe 2 to 4 is just enough to put you in that ideal range a week, right? And we'll talk about methods of delivery and stuff like that a little bit later on. But what I am seeing being prescribed, namely by HRT clinics, not usually OBGYNs, but sometimes, I am seeing women being prescribed anywhere from 15 to 50 milligrams of testosterone a week. So their total test registers between 2 and 500.
That's
Essentially, a male's, a hypogonadal male, or like just a dude chilling if we're talking 500. So that's what I'm seeing.
that's crazy. I've seen 19, I've seen 17, I've seen 14, and those are probably the three that stand out to me for, and these are not competitive women either. These
No.
are just like lifestyle,
Mhm.
and none of them are even like menopausal. That's the
Yeah.
other thing that's been the interesting kicker on this. Um, and all of them are surprised when I'm like,
And yeah,
how
and they're wondering
is
why they have like hair on their
how
chin.
is nobody
Like,
Yeah, it's crazy to me, but that's definitely something that needs to start having some more um openly discussed education around because, you know, if it wasn't for the three of us have done doing mentorships or outside reading on our own, like you
Hmm.
go into a doctor or a clinic or whatever, which you assume is the same level of standard as an actual doctor's office, which it is not, um, and trust them because they have higher education than you. So why wouldn't you trust them, right? That's really not how that goes. Especially keeping in mind that all of these clinics, and this is not to like talk down or badly about any one specific, but they're also a business and they're looking to fucking make money.
Yep.
And that is so easily forgotten.
I mean, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Um, that is a big thing. I mean, it's a cash cow, freaking business, man. Because when you think about it, when you get test vials from your local source, it's like way cheaper than
Mhm.
your HRT clinic that's like what 150, 175 a month just for tests. You're like, the fuck?
Yep.
So yeah, it's definitely a money kind of making
Hmm.
scheme a little bit, but there are good HRT clinics out there. But I do think a lot are, it's just misinformation. Because I don't think there's a lot of like research and clinical studies yet on TRT and women that they may just be going off of male values and like reducing it down a little bit. And they're like, oh, yeah, we'll just take a quarter of what we give a male to give
Hmm.
it to a female because we're many men of, essentially, which is
Right.
not true.
Something I would really like to see is starting to have more doctors involved with prescribing it accurately, because it is very difficult to have a like PCP or endocrinologist, whatever it is that you're going to see, OBGYN, that are willing to prescribe this. I ran into that. I before making any decision to go through a clinic, did go and discuss it with my PCP, and she's like, "Yeah, no, hands off. I want nothing to do with that."
Yep.
And that's disheartening because you want to have that type of experience coming from a professional that you feel comfortable to guide you properly. And I think that that's definitely a ball being dropped in that aspect of healthcare.
Absolutely. But it also goes to show you that it's like they're not progressive. And again, they're
Yeah.
just waiting for like diseases to pop up because that's what they're educated in, which is why I do think it's very valuable for coaches to kind of step up when it comes to being educated on not disease management, but disease prevention and like making sure that, whether you are experienced in like menopause or maybe you are wanting to take the Ash Markham route and just be like sports plus and not have kids and just even support my hormones that my body no longer naturally makes on its own because of all of the neglect that I gave and did over my pre-adolescent early adult years that I have to own those decisions, but also not fearmonger and leave me to suffer because we're not willing to prescribe hormones that my body doesn't make as well as it could with a little bit of help, right? And also just keep in mind that like I'm not just taking TRT, I'm on estrogen and progesterone too. And like there's also fear mongering around estrogen and how estrogen gives cancer. And it's like we're just missing the mark here because rather than making a decision based on logic, we're making a decision based out of fear. And we're not looking at like proper research, we're not looking at follow-up labs, especially like we're just given the initial labs, maybe. Sometimes we don't even get labs at all. We're just like, oh, you have all of these symptoms. Check, 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 check. Here's a drug at a dosage that we have no fucking idea. Or maybe even the administration is not effective. So like testosterone ideally is an injectable, right? But not everyone wants to, pin their hiney, which I mean, that's valid, right? That's a valid thing that soccer mom Sue doesn't want to pin, okay? That's fine. But then also thinking about like, okay, gels, creams, you know, other things like patches, I think, pellets, like all
Pellets, yeah.
yeah, yeah. All of these things are different modes of receiving hormones, but again, has their downsides and drawbacks like anything else when it comes to like steady hormone administration, the absorption rate of the skin, the ability to maybe rub off on other people, your family, your husband, your fucking dog, you know what I'm saying? So it's like I mean, I'm serious. Like, it is so important to understand that, like, while there are pros and cons to different types of TRT when it comes to administration, like, we need to think what's best long term. Because, yeah, I don't mind pinning when I'm, 30 years old, but okay, when I'm 60 or 70, I honestly don't know. Maybe I will switch to like a vaginal cream. Like, maybe there'll be better options when I'm older, but like, also thinking to the point where, again, like the older that you are, you might not want to go like the needle route.
I just pictured like a bulldog all jacked up when you're saying rubbing off on your dog. You mentioned fear mongering too, and I think another one that is a commonly connected fear mongering to HRT is that you're gonna die if you decide for some reason that you want to come off of it. It's a commitment forever, and the reality of that is if you come off, you may see that you feel differently. You'll definitely feel differently for the fact that, you're not having those hormones supported anymore. And yes, maybe the amount of time that you've been on these hormones, your natural production has regressed, but that doesn't mean that you're going to go from feeling good to like death because you're coming off. You're going to go probably close to back to how you felt before taking them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, God damn it. Okay, now we can hear. I see the little green box and I know that I'm in the clear if you can hear me. Oh my God. But yeah, and I think if you're working with a health coach or have a good HRT or OBGYN who helps support your lifestyles to improve your testosterone levels at the same time as adding in the extra testosterone from TRT injections or cream or whatever it is for you, then when you pull that injection off, you actually may still feel better than when you added it in because you're focusing on those lifestyle factors too that can support testosterone levels. Because I don't think a lot of people notice it, but I see it mainly in, when we're looking at males nowadays, like younger teenagers, young adults, their testosterone is fucking tanked, and
Mhm.
it's because of they're tablet kids. They're on their phones all the time. They're not outside. They're eating processed shit. They're not exercising, or when they do, it's just, BS. They're not doing cardio. They're, just not supporting their natural production. So, and it comes down to like diet and lifestyle a lot of times for sure.
Mhm.
So, just because we add that in, we need to make sure that we're addressing the other things too.
Absolutely. And I think it's also worth noting that before you even consider HRT, like let's say you listen to Laura, good job for doing your research about like what is right for you and looking at your labs. When you look at your labs, making sure that a qualified professional is looking over them and fine tooth combing them, I think is the phrase, not just being like, oh, I think you're within normal ranges, send you on your way to your HRT clinic, but making sure your body is able to receive hormones, like in a good state to metabolize the hormones, because it's not just a simple, like, oh, I have my test pin, I'm just gonna and hope for the best, because hormones influence how your body goes about all other processes. And if your body's not able to receive the hormones in terms of, we're thinking like a downregulated thyroid, we're thinking a sluggish liver, maybe you're not going to the bathroom in the way that you should be, and you're not detoxing properly. Adding hormones into a body that's not ready to receive them is usually a dumpster fire for like everything involved, right? It's just an accumulation, and then you end up doing way more harm than good because you didn't do your due diligence. So making sure before you hop on the bandwagon of any hormone replacement, not just testosterone, that you are in a good spot, like mentally, physically, with your labs, and then also financially, because again, this is a reoccurring thing that you have to purchase every single month or every 90 days, depending upon how the clinic services you.
Also throw frequent lab work into that too. Probably, I mean, if you nail your dosing and whatever, maybe like 3 times a year, something like that.
Mhm.
At least.
And I think, oh my God, there we go. It's working. I think like um consistency too. A lot of people, like I have a lot of like Gen Pop people who are like, oh, I forgot my TRT injection this week, or I didn't bring it with me on vacation. It's like that it kind of defeats the purpose. And, we have to build up that habit of actually utilizing these hormones when we have them in.
Mhm.
But I think that's a really good point about is your body ready to receive these? And absorb them because I talked about this similarly on my page with my client who's having really significant digestive issues for the past year. And he's a bodybuilder. He's ran through cycles. And when we add in PEDs in a body that's not able to absorb and utilize them, then we're pretty much just frying our androgen receptors. And
Hmm.
then, a cycle down the road probably won't work for you. So the same applies for TRT and HRT too.
Hmm. Agreed. Agreed. So let's say you decide that you get your labs, you've done first off, before you're just like, okay, imagine like you're like doing everything wrong and your testosterone is shit. That, in my opinion, you are not qualified candidate for TRT because you have not done your due diligence to receive hormones. So let's say you follow Coach Laura's advice, you've done your research first, you've listened to us, and you've created the lifestyle habit. And you've noticed a little bit of improvement in your testosterone, but with either your goals when it comes to, bodybuilding or your fertility health or just your general quality of life, you've decided that TRT is right for you. This is where it is so important to think about your modality. So what's going to make sense for you long term when it comes to injection, pellet, cream, patch, yada, 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 and then making sure that you get follow-up labs. So let's say you take the injectable route because that is the most common and I would say the most beneficial because testosterone cypionate especially is more level because it's a longer ester length, the way the body metabolizes the ester, it's a bit more smooth, right? So it's less frequent injections and it's just more stable hormones rather than, kind of like doing a little wave. So from there, I think it would be really good to kind of retest about 4 to 5 weeks after you start your treatment to see where your levels now fall. But also keep in mind that when you inject, you are going to have a higher dosage, right? Like, duh, you just injected a hormone into your body. So when you get your tests done, not only should you wait 4 to 5 weeks after you start your treatment, but then now we need to think of the valleys and the troughs. And usually the general words of wisdom for HRT clinics is we want to see the trough, we want to see the valley. So you want to go and inject your hormone and get the test done 4 days after. And again, this is just for cypionate because that's usually when, it starts to level off and dip a little bit. So that way you can look at your other lab markers in terms of how has this influenced your red blood cells, iron metabolism, your cholesterol, because hormones influence other parts of your body, which is why it's so important to not just look at your testosterone and your free testosterone, but how that TRT has impacted your entire system. Megs, welcome back.
Thank you. I was getting
Went
tired.
around a little bit.
I was getting tired of trying to find that green line, so I was like, whatever. We're just gonna be on the phone.
Now we can see the full top though. I
Yeah,
do
I
like
know. I'm here
I
for it.
do like the keyhole.
Thank you. Oh God. What a headache, man. I try to like buy nice things to like enhance it and then it just turns out shit.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, I think we all touched on solid points here with it.
Mm.
Um, I haven't seen as crazy shit as you, as far as dosages go. I think the highest I've had was like similar to what Laura said, like 15 to 20 milligrams per week. Um, and then when we checked labs, obviously we probably cut that down more than in half. So
Yeah.
I think the craziest story with TRT that I had was I had a competitor last year who her previous coach, she didn't want to go on any type of PEDs, androgen. So he decided to just up her test to 20-25 milligrams per week instead.
How
Yeah.
was your
Huh?
side effects from that?
Nothing really crazy because she was just with him for I think like 4 weeks or 6 weeks.
Hmm.
But like to use that reasoning, like, oh, you won't take PEDs? Okay, let's just jack up your androgens and just, create a shitstorm in your body. Perfect. Let's do it.
Yeah. And that also kind of bleeds into another thing that we're seeing with faked primo. I know we kind of touched on this last time or 2 times ago, where it's like
Mm.
a lot of the time the primo that's being sold now is either test P or it's just fucking oil. Like there's not even any anabolic or any testosterone in the vial. It's just like motherfuckers go to like Walmart, suck up some canola oil and are selling you gear. So that's something I've been seeing, but I do think it's really important to like understand that when you either start TRT or TRT plus or TRT plus even a cycle, like a full anabolic cycle, it is likely, if not totally going to be expected, that your menstrual cycle is going to change. Because again, you are adding in hormones, extra hormones. Some may aromatize to estrogen, some may not, but it's very common to see that your period is either going to be really shortened or really lengthened, or it might disappear entirely. Because again, you are adding more hormones into a system and your body is going to react. And it's going to react at the level of the brain with hormones like FSH and LH, which will alter your ovaries in terms of its own natural production. So that is something that is also very common, and I don't think it's spoken about enough, especially if you're working with a male coach and they just don't know. So that is something that I think is good to like talk about because while yeah, it's not ideal, it also goes to show you that like this is why we don't just run Primable year round and hope for the fucking best. Like we cycle things on and off to restore proper functioning of not just our ovaries, but also our entire system as a whole, vis-a-vis checking labs.
I actually had somebody tell me that at one point that you can run Primo as long as it's at like 20 milligrams a week or less. Like you can just stay on it. And I remember thinking like, oh, okay, cool. Like way back before knowing anything and wasn't taking anything either. But like the fact that people actually recommend that now looking back is mind blowing.
I mean, I'm not saying that's good, but I think I would prefer running Primo year round because I've heard some people that run Anavar year round. Like they just like fuck your kidneys, dog. Pop in that aim with your Flintstone
Yeah.
company and let's go. Don't
God,
run Primo year round. Don't hear me and be like, oh, I'm gonna no, don't. Bad. Squirt, squirt, squirt. Bad.
that's crazy. That is
Mhm.
fucking crazy. But you did mention something about aromatization from testosterone to estrogen, and I think that's why it's so important to add in like progesterone. I know a lot of women, especially going to HRT clinics, sometimes they aren't prescribed progesterone alongside TRT. And I do think that that is a big faulty thing. I see that they get prescribed TRT and spironolactone to, help with the DHT conversion. But I'm like, okay, but what about estrogen? How are we supporting your estrogen and your progesterone? Because they all fucking work together, people. So yeah, I mean, if they're not going to get progesterone through their HRT clinic, I mean, I myself, I take sublingual. It's this molecular progesterone complex. I think it's called Forefront Health is the company, and I've been using that alongside my TRT. And honestly, like my sleep is better, my mood's better. Um, yeah, it
Is
is.
that pretty similar to the like Progon B Beswecken?
First, Progon B, I think it tastes disgusting, and I run through the bottle like that, and I'm just like, I didn't see a big change in my labs when I used it.
Real
But this,
talk, yes.
yeah,
I
but
think that
this
product is
one,
trash.
I do too. I really do. And I think they have a progesterone cream too, and it's shit. But this one, it has vitamin E oil in it, so it increases the absorption of progesterone.
Hmm.
So I prefer it for clients and myself because I don't work with an HRT clinic, so I don't
Yeah.
have progesterone.
I don't think like the whole like I understand the idea of using like Progon B, Bezwecken, and Chaseberry. Like I understand it, and I have used that in the past, absolutely. And sometimes I've seen success and sometimes not. But as of late, like I think we're just such against a wall when it comes to like all the shit that we have to deal with when it comes to like lifestyle, stress, toxins, infection, like all of these things that like adding a little like tab of chaseberry, dog, that ain't doing shit nowadays. You know what I'm saying? And like, I'm not saying that you're not going to see success because again, I have used it in some clients and have seen success, but like, usually there's a lot more up here that needs to be worked on before we even get like ovarian functioning like better where it needs to be. So I think that while you're working on again the lifestyle and like the therapy stuff, like a temporary, even again, temporary HRT thing or something else might be a better option than just like wasting money constantly on Bezwecken and that chase shit, which tastes like ass. Like it is so fucking vile.
Really? I've never used it. I've actually used it with several clients that are trying to retrieve their menstrual cycles, and I've had success every single time. I've only probably like three or four people, but every single time it's been successful. But maybe it was also the combination of a lot of lifestyle factors changing too.
Yeah, it tastes awful, and I wouldn't I wouldn't wish that on
I
my
ain't
kid.
gonna do you like that. All right, good to know.
Now, you know what tastes fucking awful is, and I posted on my story because I use it right now from Amino Asylum, the SLU PP332, and I just started taking. It's called Fladraffinil. Have you guys ever heard of that?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So it helps to just boost like dopamine. It helps with like your performance, your energy levels and stuff. Girl, that shit is nasty. Like I just do 1 full ml and every morning I'm taking it with my gut health drink. It's like a fucking chaser. I'm just like like it's just it brought me back to like my grad school days when I actually drank and I was like like but it works. Like my focus, my energy, so great. It's kind of like I think it's similar to modafinil. If you guys have ever had that, tried that, helps
Mm-mm.
suppress your appetite and prep, and it helps with bumping
You've
up your
talked about
energy.
you've talked about that with your
Modafinil,
clients.
yeah, yeah. But this one, I can't remember the. It's a bunch of letters and numbers. I can't remember it, but yeah, it's called Fladraffinil on Amino Asylum. Works wonders. Tastes like ass. But yeah, I'd take Progon B over this any day.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying Program B doesn't work, but it's just I don't know. I feel like there's so many other things that need to be worked on before we
Oh
start
yeah.
just adding hormones into the system. So like yeah, obviously like it can work, but in most cases, at least with the clients that I've done, it's like there are so many other things that need to be done first before again we're introducing hormones into a body that is not ready to receive them yet. Because not only does it taste gross, but then you're also wasting money. And like that financial stress also goes completely against like what we're trying to do too. So kind of getting back with like TRT and HRT, like one, don't be afraid of testosterone. Like
Mhm.
it's not something that is to be afraid. And this is also a misconception where it's like, oh, women have more estrogen and progesterone. It's like, no, dog. Like testosterone is actually the
Mhm.
bigger hormone in terms of like quantity because units matter. But because we're not like, super like bodybuilders really suck with units and unit conversion. I don't know what it is in our brains, but we just have like a 404 error when people are talking about like syringe math and units and all that stuff. But like, we make more testosterone than estrogen and progesterone, but like we don't, but just because we make more of it doesn't mean we need to be having a total test of 500, right? Like again, 30 to 60 is still like ideal. So I think that's also important. It's also important not to fear other hormones. So like you want to make sure you have ample of progesterone. You want to make sure you have enough estrogen because I also know that the whole like buzzword of estrogen dominance gets fear mongered left and right. And like, oh my God, am I too estrogen dominant? And it's like, I personally upped my estrogen dosage and I felt a fuck ton better. So it's like, again, because my estrogen was so low, increasing my HRT made me feel a lot better, which is why, again, it's important to constantly check your labs to see how your hormones are reacting to your body, how your hormones are making you feel, and then titrating up and down as needed. And if you're not sure, making sure you work with a coach that understands, or a doctor that understands, or an HRT clinic that isn't going to charge you at the fucking ass. Because again, it is so important that when you're fiddling with dials, that you're looking at the entire picture, not just a single variable.
Yeah. I think also, when it comes to TRT and HRT protocols, you have to consider your previous health history too. I know a lot of women get frustrated because we're implementing, these practices to help regain a menstrual cycle that maybe she's lost from lifestyle factors, but also maybe she was on birth control for fucking 15 plus years. So just 6 to even a year on these you may not see your period return like that. It's not going to be a quick process. It still requires frequent monitoring and, like we've talked about, the lifestyle changes too. Um, so yeah, just wanted to say that little tidbit because I'm working with a few people that they are getting frustrated because they're like, I still haven't gotten my period back. But I'm like, zoom out. You
Yep.
were on hormonal birth control since you were freaking 14. You're almost 30. Like, guys, it takes a toll on you for sure.
And then that mental stress, it's kind of like when you're trying
Yeah.
to get pregnant, where it's like you're trying so fucking hard, and then you see like everyone has babies or pregnancy announcements, and you like feel less because you're trying so hard. But that's the usually the problem is you're trying so fucking hard where it becomes a stress. So it's
Yeah.
like that's where it's so good to have other things to do, other goals, other things to focus on because again, that mental block is usually the most destructive. And that holds true of anything, trying to get your period back, lower your cortisol, be a better bodybuilder, like any goal that you have that you hyper fixate on because you're scared, because you want to control it, that is the reason why it's not getting better. And that was like a huge thing for me that I just needed to fucking let go. Because when you let go, you can breathe.
Yeah. And honestly, that's why I know a lot of like doctors don't recommend tracking your food or being super diligent with that. They're just like, you just have to eat more pretty much, which I feel like is a wrong word of advice. But sometimes tracking so meticulously, people do, get very anal with it and they cause more stress. Like maybe eating out, they're super like anxious and like freaking out all the time over these little bites and stuff, and that stress does build up. And
Mhm.
I think a lot of times too, it's like, yes, you may be doing it all quote unquote right, like waking up and going on your fasted walk and doing all this stuff. But sometimes, and we've talked about it before on the podcast, if you're racking up 20, 30,000 steps, like you're surpassing what's actually benefiting you,
Yeah.
And I think people like they just take it and then they do the good health stuff on steroids pretty much. And like that's just backfiring.
Mhm. Absolutely. Which also kind of goes back to the idea like of lower test. It's like both male and female, like if you're hyperfixating on a variable that you're trying to improve, like it's not to say that you shouldn't continue the good habits, right? It's not that the habits are wrong. It's the way that you're viewing them. It's your perception that's wrong. And that needs to be addressed. Learn to like keep the good habits without becoming a prisoner to them. Because again, that mental perceived stress is like usually the most harmful thing once you have all the lifestyle, adjustments and factors fixed and keyed up.
Yeah. Love it. I'm glad that we brought those points up for sure. Because that goes for any gut health phase, freaking bodybuilding even. Oh my God. Bodybuilders are the worst, I think.
Yeah,
For sure. I agree.
we suck.
We do, we suck.
Laura, any final thoughts from your end?
I'm just thinking how you mentioned the gut health phase too. I have three clients going through that right now, and every single one of them is like the hyperfixation stage of why am I not 100% better yet? And honestly, all three of them had a combination of working with me and their GI doctors
Ah,
implementing medication. So some of it is like, well, we just blasted your stomach and now we got to get back to a point there's balance. And that's, I think, the key for all of this is having a point that you can reach balance.
yeah. I feel like when gut health cases are also really hard because it's like there can be a lot of overgrowth or there can be not enough good commensals. And like that's really hard to toggle that, especially when you have like a person that you're working with. And if you have too many cooks in the kitchen, like it's a lot of supplements or it's a lot of time, or maybe there's a low FODMAP perspective that is playing in. And like sometimes you just gotta like fucking let go and like start to think outside of the box so that way you improve their quality of life, but then also make sure that we have reasonable expectations that everyone has different levels of bugs in their tum tum. Like that's just the state of it. So like again, I know that we're big on like what's normal versus what's optimal, but we also have to understand that as coaches and as people, we can't get lost to chasing numbers. Like at some point you have to accept that good enough is good because
That
that's
was actually
it.
a podcast topic that I was thinking for another time is just running into a lot of people that like actually don't want that like level of perfection and want somewhere like I feel okay, but like I don't want to do all this crazy bullshit of protocols and restrictions and put me back to feeling like I have the eating disorder all over again that got me these gut issues to begin with. And
Mhm.
it definitely is a really interesting full circle.
That's a
Yeah.
great podcast. Let's do that next week because I think that's so important to know when good is good enough. Because I know that like us perfectionistic people, it's like it's never good enough. We always got to get better. But at some point, like the pursuit of being better and the pursuit of greatness, you lose yourself. You lose yourself in that sauce because what's really happening is you no longer feel good enough. And that's the problem. So sometimes it's just like, dog, enjoy your fucking life because you only get one. And you're a silly little bunny that's going to make mistakes, but like you're never going to reach perfection. So find peace in that and enjoy your life because you're not perfect. Like that is so important. I love that topic, Laura.
I think, I mean, that goes back to literally last week's topic about maintenance phases. Doesn't
Mm,
mean that you're complacent, doesn't mean that you're giving up on yourself. If you just, you're like, okay, I feel good here. I know we can still improve, but like, shit, going from one hard protocol or phase where you've been very diligent to just continuing that can definitely, you
Burn
know, drain you,
Yeah,
burns you out, man.
burnt out for sure. And
Mm,
that's the thing that's kind of sucked. Like, while I think the focus of, more people having education regarding their gut health and their hormone health and lab work in general, but like then they were starting to also see this like almost disordered hyperfixation of perfection to status quo of what is numbers or ranges or whatever, and no longer worrying about like honestly just what they feel like too. Like that's all that doesn't even matter.
yeah.
yeah. I think, throughout all of these like insane protocols that I've seen, um, people they like you said, they lose themselves, they lose connection with themselves. They don't even know when their digestion's off or how they're feeling or how their energy levels are or anything.
Mhm.
Like they're just like so robotic in it that they forget about their innate like cues that their body literally was designed to give them because they're just so clouded by all this mumbo jumbo and like
Yeah.
it's that's what leads to the burnout and them giving up and going back to bad habits and yeah, full circle for sure.
Yeah. I'm reading a book right now called You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero, I think is how you
Mm.
say your last name. And that is a good book that teaches you just the power of perspective and the idea of what you focus on, you amplify, and what you put out, you attract, and what you attract, you receive. And I think it's really important to, again, you can still be a professional and level up and want better, but don't lose the kid at heart. Make sure you're still having fun. And it takes a long ass time to find that and to create that for yourself. But if you're struggling with that and having kind of like identity crisis and maybe you start to assume that like your gut health phase or your PCOS or any other thing that is wrong with you starts to become part of your identity, like read that book because it offers some damn good perspective that I think a lot of people are lacking and would heavily benefit from because I certainly have.
I like that.
Nothing wrong with all of us, just to what extent?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
dude,
Let's
there's
wrap this shit up because I know Laura's got to go. But what are we thankful for? And do we have any fun questions?
mm, I don't have anything fun personally.
Or do you have any fun questions? Any bear worms?
No bear worms. We're going to the sea lion exhibit.
That was so funny. Dude, Meg
And
is like the best at making, I don't even know what you call them, random ass
On the
questions.
fly. I was with a client too when I received that, and I'm like, she's looking at me like, deal
I
with
don't
that
even know.
later.
I was just eating my breakfast and I was like, I'll just do this real quick.
And
It seems appropriate.
no, we'll have to like put that on the podcast too, so that people know that Megs has talents outside of just coaching.
Yep.
I wouldn't
Fantastic.
say talent, but like, yeah,
I think
full
it's a
autism.
talent. I think it's a talent. But let's
Thank
go around
you.
and say what we're thankful for.
I'm thankful for our commentary. It always brightens up my week. This has been a little darker week for me, so it's brightening it up.
Yes, I'm thankful for my gal pals because it's important to have community while also like giving value, but then also remembering that like life is serious, but not that serious. Like it's really important to laugh and have community. And I think that it just reiterates the point of having good community and having good people in your life, because life is very challenging at times, and having the right people that will weather the storm with you is such a gift and such a blessing. So my gratitude is you ladies this week.
Love that. I'm grateful for a few things. The first one is urgent care being open to 9 p.m. Um, but also my mindset growth. I know I still have a lot of work to do on it, but if this shit was happening like back in my 2020 prep, like sciatic flare up and then freaking sinusitis, all this, I would just cry. I would be like, this is the end of the world. I'm pulling prep. Fuck this shit. Like it's just not meant for me. But I realized like it's life, you know? It's just a little roadblock that I just have to get around. And now I'm mentally equipped to actually handle it like an adult. So
Yeah,
I'm
dude.
grateful for my mental growth. And for you guys, of
Thanks.
course.
Like, I'm grateful for myself
I'm
doing her
grateful for
Oscar
me.
speech.
Fuck you. No.
Meg says, fuck you, Ash and Laura. Even Laura and Ash are like, we
I'm
love you
grateful for
guys.
you.
Meg's like, I'm thankful for myself.
I'm perfect. God.
I
All
love
right,
it.
ladies. Well, been fun as always. Chat with you both soon.
Sounds
All right.
good. Love you, ladies. We'll catch you next week. Bye.
Bye.